Thank you, and sorry for the delay. I'd like to welcome you to the Public Works Committee for today, April 11th. Before I call the meeting to order, I would like to have a special shout out for Randy Gallant, who was celebrated today. Randy has been an employee with the city's Public Works Department for 50 years as of April 1st. So I think we need to recognize that commitment and many years of service to the city. So thank you, Randy, for all you've done. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'm going to see if we have any declarations of conflict. I don't see any. I need someone to approve our agenda today. I'm going to get Councillor McAleer. You're good to approve it. Councillor Tweel, the second. Thank you. I'm going to ask for someone to move for adoption of our minutes that are attached from March the 7th. Moved by Councillor McAleer, seconded by Councillor Tweel. Are there any business arising out of those minutes, previous minutes? I'm not seeing any. That moves us into our fairly lengthy agenda today. Under reports and discussion, the first item is the 2024 spring tree order, and I think we have a guest here to present to us today on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So an RFQ was issued in March for 109 trees for our annual spring planting. 3 submissions were received with bids from Neighbours, Dutch Master and Arbor Nursery. We had a scoring system where we looked at the average price of the tree. We looked at whether the order met the specification that was detailed in the RFQ. And we looked at, we asked whether they could submit a sustainability statement. So through that process, there was a scoring matrix that was identified in the RFQ, and the highest point scoring was Dutch Master with at 98. So it was very close, but they edged out based on the fact that they had all of the trees that were requested. So essentially, we're looking for a resolution to move forward with the award of the spring tree order to Dutch Master Nurseries Limited.
Thank you very much. The report's in your package there. I think it's fairly common sense. And thank you for that report. Are we comfortable moving this on to council? So Councillor McAleer, Councillor Tweel, thank you. So that will move to council for approval. Thank you. Item number B is our speed hump program update. And I'm assuming, Scott, that will be you.
Thank you, Chair. So this has been back and forth a few times. We're trying to take all the feedback we've received from council and try to bring in an update to our speed hump program to make it easier to manage and less cumbersome for some of our staff, while still being able to deploy a number of speed humps around the city in areas that we need some attention. So we've kind of put together 2 options that could be approved at council. The only difference really between the 2 options is option A, there is a requirement for a community petition, and option B makes that optional. We are at this point in time recommending option A to continue with with that petition, as just another piece of the puzzle to show that there was public input into the decision-making process on where these speed humps are placed. Some of the other changes that we've already talked to in that policy, and you'll see it in your package, but just some high-level ones are there will be some back and forth a little bit more with council if they choose to help us identify spots that they're seeing in neighborhoods that require or that require speed hump or areas that they're receiving some complaints from residents, while still meeting the criteria of the speed hump installation process, making sure it's installed in an appropriate location, not on curves, not near intersections, things like that. So so we're here today to recommend option A to move forward to council for final adoption.
Thank you, Scott. Councillor McAleer, you have a question?
Yeah, just thank you for that, Scott. The chair, to whatever, maybe the manager. I'm kind of understanding if we're starting from square one today, there were no speed bumps in the city. we got 10 wards, we got 100 speed bumps, 10 for each ward, basically? Is that the,
So the goal of it, and I apologize if it's not, I think it is written in here, but it'd be based on average, roughly, every ward would have 10, but it's based on your number of residential lane kilometer roads. So one ward, just because maybe they have fewer residential streets and more commercial streets, they may get down to 9, and another ward that has a few more residential streets may get an extra one to 11. So it's going to be a little bit of balancing that way, but on average, we anticipate 10 per ward.
is there a situation where presently there's a number of bumps, speed humps greater than 10, and if so, will there be an effort to bring it in balance with what the new policy is? Is that a fair assumption?
That's correct. So we want to kind of reset the clock a bit. Not saying that some of the spots where they currently aren't going to go back to where they are in those spots. We know there are a lot of those spots are the speed hump is working very effectively, but there are some areas where we may have a couple more than other areas of the city where we see that there might be need. And just listening to council and the public, we're just trying to spread out our speed humps around the city because we know these issues are occurring each and every year. And it gives us an option now to move them around from street to street every so many years. Because demographics do change from time to time, and what was happening currently was we were just continually adding to our number of speed humps over the time, and never going back and looking at, does that speed hump still make a difference in that spot? We want to get to the point where speed humps are a temporary measure. And as we go and do work in the neighborhood, or maybe the demographics of the neighborhood changes, we want to have that option to have that removed and redeployed in another location. Because as of right now, there really wasn't that mechanism to make that change.
Thank you. There is still criteria too, Councillor McAleer, that are in line for where speed humps will be. You can't put them on dead-end streets, or if you're on a bus or a truck route or different streets like that. So there is an actual criteria, and we can get a copy of that for you so you can see what streets technically meet our criteria. Also, what was I asking? I see here, Scott, you're going to reevaluate on an annual basis to observe. So in that case, will they have to apply with a application every year, or is it going to be, how do you anticipate
and
that?
so that's a really, really good question. So our intention is not that they would have to submit a new application each and every year. But, from if the councillor of the ward, because how we have it written right now, the councillor of the ward does have some say or some influence on the location, just because we know you councillors are out in the wards, you're talking to your residents, you're hearing the concerns, we can't be everywhere at once. And so we want it to be a joint decision-making process so that we get these speed humps around the city. So, no, you would, if the location had it in a previous year, no, you wouldn't have to apply for it, but doesn't mean it is going to go back if it is determined that that speed hump would have a better benefit in another location in the neighborhood.
And that makes sense. What I'd recommend in our policy maybe is if we could look at saying a one-time application or something, just to make that piece a little bit clearer, because I think that would be less confusing.
That's
if we have
a
that.
great addition, and so we'll make note of that. And if that is committee's wish to move forward, we'll make that amendment into the document to be sent to council for final consideration.
I think that just would reduce some confusion for sure. Well, that's good. I think they're recommending option A. Both will be in the package, which will allow council an opportunity to look at it and have a little bit of discussion anyway on what they'd like to see. So can I have someone move this document on to council? Moved, seconded, perfect. Everybody's in favor of that. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work on that, Scott. With the amendment, with that little amendment piece added, please. All right. So number C today, we are going to look at what is being recommended on our 2024 street resurfacing update since our capital budget. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. So yes, we've gone through and made some amendments to our resurfacing, upcoming resurfacing plan based on the new approved capital budget. So you'll find attached, in the attached document, the locations that we're planning to do some work. Two bigger highlights included in this is the work that we're planning to do for the Norwood Road. As everyone's well aware, East Royalty is a bit of a, there's kind of one entrance in and out of the East Royalty area, which has been a point of concern from a public safety standpoint. So the goal is to make Norwood Road accessible year-round, so that there is an alternative route in the event that the St. Peter's Road ends up closed due to an accident. The other one is we just got to do a bit of work on Brackley Point Road. With our new depot there, we want to just widen out the road there for a left turn lane so that it's safe for vehicles to sit and wait and make that turn into the facility. So there'd be a little bit of that work, and the rest would be under typical or all our residential streets in as you see on the list.
Thank you. I do know that you received an email around some street work that needs to happen up in the new subdivision where we adopted the road on sinkholes and stuff that are developing. So I don't know if we need to look at adding, if that's considered street resurfacing or if that's just we need to go in and do some real repairs. But I think we have to make sure that some of these emergency areas are looked at too.
Yes, and some of that may fall still under the warranty period, or that would be our own crews doing that work where the sinkhole around probably a catch basin, so it's likely a separation of a pipe and a catch basin that we need to repair first and then patch it. So yes, so those are things we'll look at, but likely any of those emergency repairs will be done by our own crews, not this contract.
Okay, we'll follow up on that. Okay. We also talked, and it would be really helpful, Scott, to some point, we were going to get a little bit more detail, just, I think council would benefit from how you identified these streets. We had talked about providing them with some information on the criteria, again, that you used when we explained it here in Public Works. I think people will really appreciate understanding. So I don't know if we can include something so that they can see what our criteria is or what our methods are for identifying the roads. You know, you had that great thing where you showed our roads that were the worst and whatever, but just a little reminder for them that might help.
Yeah, that's a great,
Moving forward.
great suggestion, and I'll see if my team can pull that together for our next council meeting.
I know.
Yep.
I think it's done. It would just be a real couple key points to remind
Totally.
them why.
Yep,
That'd be
absolutely.
good. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the street thing, Chair, and maybe to Scott. I had a resident reach out to me, very eloquent, point blank request on Sandalwood Street in Ward 7. And anyway, I think I may have even passed the email on to you, Scott. Anyway, I just I think it's a situation. I don't know what's been done or how long that particular street, kind of where it fits. But again, in the process, is there a way for me to kind of communicate back to this resident what the expectation may be in terms of a particular street? In this case, Sandalwood.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about that offline on what we can have a look at and see where it landed on our rating system, and we can provide that information and share that with that resident. That's not a problem. And for those out there that just because your list is not on a resurfacing program doesn't mean there's not going to be attention done to that road. We have our crews, 3 crews typically each year, that do both long patches and small patches, potholes and such, and they pretty much get to every street every year that requires attention. And so yes, if there's and that's part of a long-term maintenance plan on any street as well, is patching and things like that. So, but yes, we can look at it where it fell in our rating and provide a summary of why it ended up where it did.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Counselor Twill, do you have a question?
So Scott, just on this list here, so how many lists is there in total besides this one?
I don't quite understand the question because we only work off one list. So we rated every street based on our system. And it produces one list of ratings, and this was developed based on that, with the addition that the Nora Road would not get rated because it is a seasonal road as it is right now, and we made it a priority because it had been identified as a priority by emergency services. And the Brackley Point Road widening, we knew we had to do that once our facility was open on Brackley Point Road. Everything else was rated as per the rating system. Now, there might be the odd street that was either probably removed from this list, I should say, and that is because we sit down with our folks at Water and Sewer, and go through and our own crews as well, and we go through each street. There was a spreadsheet created, and it said, our superintendent looks after sidewalks. Are there sidewalks on that street? What condition are they in? Is it a small minor repair that we need to do before we pave, or do we need to look actually at it and fully replace it? And is that feasible this year? Should we push it for another year? So I believe, Joey, you were in on those meetings as well, and a few other of our superintendents, as well as water sewer staff, and they went through that list line by line, identifying any of those water and sewer issues as well. There might have been a water valve that they know they have to replace. All right, we'll let them replace it this year. We'll let it settle. And then next year, it'll be at the top of the list for resurfacing. So those are things that we're trying to significantly improve. We don't want to come back to a street twice, and we don't want to see streets cut up after the fact. No one wins in that case. So we went through line by line. I believe there were a few, not that many that got removed from the list. And then it was just the next on the list that was worse, just kind of moved up.
Thank you, Scott.
Follow-up, Scott. I sent a couple emails. One is, excuse me, residents of Wendy Drive have been after me for a number of years. That was one of the streets that was left over from the separation of the sanitary stormwater sewer, where, as you know, one side of the street was repaved and the other side was left. And so there's a real imbalance there. The Public Works crews have attempted over the years to pave the street, but nonetheless, it needs to be repaved from Kirkwood Drive down to Queen. So,
Counselor Twill, will you do me a favor, similar to what Counselor McAleer did? Can you please forward an email to Scott on your specific streets that you want to have reevaluated? And that way, rather than breaking down, we're not going to discuss today about changing the list, I don't think. Scott, if you feel that some of these streets,
that's fine. Is there still an opportunity to have more streets, add more streets to this list?
There's always an opportunity, just depends where the money's coming from. So we'll tender this work out. Our budget is based on what we've seen in the past for pricing for this type of work, with a bit of inflation year over year. So at the end of the day, if there's money left over in the budget at the end of the day, that's something that we will review and bring that back to council to get approval to spend additional funds if there is any unallocated funds available in that fund. So I'm not saying no, it hasn't been, there have been years where we have been underspent by probably 150,000 or 200,000. So there's a chance that there are a couple more streets, small streets that we could get in there. But again, we won't know that until we get this tendered and the prices in and do that evaluation.
and we also might need to come back like we did last year when Your Worship and Councillor Twill pushed to have more money added to the budget because we want to stay ahead on these roads. So
Madam Chair, apologize for being late. I was at
That's
the
okay.
PEI Ringette opening,
Wonderful.
Eastern Canadian rang
No,
out.
we're doing great here.
Parks
We're
and
moving
Recreation
along.
issue.
So I would like to, eventually, we're on the streets resurfacing update.
T.
On C, yeah. So, I think that is something, we did make a commitment because we have recognized the importance of trying to stay on top of this infrastructure. So, for sure, get those particulars.
How much was allocated for street resurfacing?
Well, I'm looking on the budget here, and it's
3.8?
3.7 million, so it must have been 3.8 million. So we might have to relook at that as we get going, but again, they're trying to make sure that they can do the work that they're tendering out to do, so we want to make sure that, and Danny had already indicated that he's going to come back, and we're going to reevaluate projects as we're going to make sure where we are, so that we're keeping in check of where we're supposed to
Well,
be,
just-
so it'll all work out.
Could I just ask a question, Madam Chair?
Can you guys all just hang on? Yeah, okay, go ahead, your worship.
For the chair to, our chief engineer. Scott, last year, did we spend 4.5? I think we raised it by $1 million.
I believe you're correct. Yeah, I think it was at 3.5 and then added an additional $1 million.
Just a follow-up question, Madam Chair, through the chair to the chief engineer. So this is the first tender? Are you doing 2 tenders? I missed it. I know, but are you just going out in the one tender for this? For what?
I
you
think
are?
we're just going to do one tender this year. Yes. Yeah, that's our intent. It's just one tender document for the entire $4 million paving program.
Have you done that before?
I'd have to go back and look how.
I thought we always broke it up.
Some years we have done it into 2 million segments. There's value to both. Sometimes it can help prices. Sometimes one bigger tender could help prices. Just from a management perspective, it's a little bit easier having one tender document because then we're not having to separate invoices and all that. But we could do 2 tenders and close them one day after another. I'm not opposed to that either.
I'm only suggesting that because, Madam Chair, with one tender, winner takes all. So, we have, the asphalt business is something like OPEC. There's only so many in the cartel, but I just want to make sure that you.
Yeah, we could definitely do that too. Yeah, if the only challenge is for us is just from the administrative side. It's a little more challenging, but it's not that we haven't done it before, and I'm sure we can do it. We'll find the capacity to do it again. So if that is the consensus around the table, I'll make the commitment today that we'll do it in 2 tenders. We'll close them a day apart, so that bidders have that chance to reevaluate their bid if they're unsuccessful with the first package.
Okay, everybody's good with 2 tenders going out then, and we'll move this on to council?
Yeah, just another question.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Twill.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to contractors, it's not so much we're doing the work, it is contractors. So I'm certainly in favor of more money being spent because, there's more traffic on our city streets now than there ever was. Some of these streets are taking a pounding. And it's like we've got to have the infrastructure in place to accommodate all this traffic. So I don't know. I know you have a criteria. I don't know how contemporary the criteria is. It was the same criteria over the last 10 years, Scott, but, there's some streets that are pretty deplorable state, and they're not on the roster. And so,
And maybe they will
That's one of the-
qualify for the
that's
fix
one of
on
the reasons
top.
why I had a major problem with the budget, because I think we got to get back to the basics, and we got to get back into putting more money into infrastructure. And this is a case in point.
So if you don't mind me just replying to that.
No.
So absolutely. So there's a couple things too, though. Some of those roads that are in really poor shape is because of what's underneath it as well. And so we do have our 5-year plans, right? We have a number of streets we've identified in that 5-year plan that we're going to replace the underground infrastructure and rebuild that road and resurface. So that's also something to keep in mind. Just because there's not additional money in this asphalt budget, there's money in other programs that we administer, like our street rehab program. Seaview Boulevard is one of them. It is being fully resurfaced, brand new surface, but it's under a different program because the whole street's being reconstructed. So that's also one thing to keep in mind. Even if you want, you want to spend $4.5 million, we probably are spending $4.5 million on street resurfacing. It's just done under different pockets. So some of the streets that may be in really rough shape, we've identified them in the longer plan. I take Nassau Street. There's Nassau Street from University back to Spring, I want to say, is in very rough shape in areas. But we've worked with Water and Sewer. They need some underground work prepared under there as well. And so that's in that long-term plan to show, yes, we've identified it, but we don't want to spend the money right now to resurface it. We want to fix it right the first time, and we will get there in a couple of years.
Madam Chair, could I just say one thing? The chief engineer comes from New Brunswick. Their bedrock, or their base, is completely different than ours. We're sandstone. Island sand beaches, there's a reason for it. But in terms of the budget that was passed on March 28th, I give kudos to the chair for coming together with a very balanced budget for the whole of the city of Charlottetown. And I gave you credit for ensuring that we put more money into infrastructure, i.e. paved roads, ATPs, sidewalks, multi-use paved pathways. So balanced budget, your initiative to put more money into infrastructure upgrades, I think we should be, acknowledging and thanking the parties that are making this happen. So, we're on the right pathway. I just want to make sure that if we go 2 tenders and if we need more money, we'll come back to the well and see if
And
there's
we'll be
any.
able to evaluate that as Dan updates us where we
Yeah.
are with our capital projects. So if we're really moving ahead and things are going, just be prepared. We'll probably be coming looking
Going
for
to the
more
bank.
money.
Going to the
Keeping
bank.
ahead. Thank you.
Just before we move on.
Yeah, one more
So when
question.
can we reevaluate this
So-
here?
so
to see
what
where
I
we're at, to see-
understand-
To see where we can add more money.
So what I think, Mitch, is because what their goal was when they, Counselor Twill, sorry, when they did the budget and the way they did the budget this year, part of that was so that we were realistic around the projects we were actually going to be able to do and the money we needed to do them. So what my understanding, and I'll allow our Director of Finance to correct me if I'm wrong, is as these projects, so the tenders are going to go out, the work's going to start, he'll come back and update us, there were 3/4 done here, this is how much money's been spent, blah, blah, blah. We still, by October, we're all done our work and everybody went well, there was no hitches, no complications. Maybe then we have to look and say, well, there's still 3 months of hot asphalt, let's look for some more money to get some more streets done. That's my understanding, but Mr. Jenkins, if you could clarify if I'm correct or not correct.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, certainly as we go along, we may find that tenders come in lower or higher than we anticipated, which means that certain streets that we expected would get paved won't, or vice versa, that we have more room to, that money will go further in terms of adding streets. There would be the opportunity, of course, if other departments have capital projects that for one reason or another are delayed this fiscal year, that we realize that they can't be completed, then perhaps we have the opportunity then to bring projects that were postponed or put off, and that could be resurfacing as well. So there will be that opportunity. But in terms of the timing, when it will, we'll continue to monitor with department heads and ask for their feedback in terms of how their plans are going, in terms of the actual projects being the rubber meeting the road, as they say. And if there are significant changes, we'll get back to council, give them an update as we proceed, and if there's opportunities to bring new priorities forward, then we will do so.
I mean, every month, the manager always brings the capital project sheet, so we'll be able to look at that and see where things are and how things are progressing, and then we can actually have discussion for sure. So I think every opportunity we can. Okay,
and
so are we
Madam Chair,
comfortable moving this to council
Just in the budget,
for information?
3.9 million for street resurfacing,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million for engineering. So that's $5 million already in the pot
Mm-hmm.
for street resurface. Is the engineering for streets resurfacing, or that's
No,
engineering in
that's-
total?
That's engineering for various projects, so we have a number of projects.
So
that
we
we're
have 4
identifying.
million?
So
And
that's
if-
correct, 4 million paving, and then you see under that paving, so when you look at the line item, it's about 3.78 million. We have a bit of buffer there. We also have to administer our testing services, and the restriping of any road that has line markings also gets paid for out of this account. So that's why we never budget right to 4 million or right to the top, because we need a little bit of room for our testing services
Yeah.
and striping services. But again, there's a bit of buffer there, and as we get the prices in, we'll be able to better understand how close we are to that 4 million threshold, and if we can add any more streets to the existing budget that's been allocated.
Thank you. So are we good moving this street resurfacing list on to council for information? Okay, everybody, thank you. So, report D, there's been a tender closure on,
Madam
Tues-
Chair, I'm going to ask that we defer this one. So it closed in February. I just believe that we're beyond the time frame that we can hold them to their price, and we never reached out to confirm the pricing again, so I'm going to pull this until we can verify that, and then we'll bring this back in the next committee meeting.
okay, so since we've already approved the agenda, I'm going to ask that one of us can recommend that we move to defer this item until our next meeting.
I'll move to defer.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Twill. You're comfortable? Okay, everybody in favor of that?
So
Thank you.
the resolution's on the floor, so moved.
There's no resolution.
Some of the bidders are wondering where we're at. Did anyone reach back to them?
That's what I'm not confident on this one, that it has been done, so that's why I want to defer it until it comes back for
Yeah.
final.
Deferred.
Yep.
Yep, fair. Thank you, and thank you, Scott. Okay. So the next one is, sorry, 2024 4500 cab and, I can't say that word. You know what, I'm tired. Chases?
Chassis.
Okay.
Chassis, yeah.
All right, Scott, go ahead on the report on this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we went out to tender for two 4,500 cab and chassis 4x4 work trucks, and the low bid of Summerside in the amount of $156,350 plus all applicable taxes is what we're being recommended to be approved. And these are both for Parks and Rec fleet, but we administer their purchases, and that's why we're here today.
Pretty straightforward. Are we comfortable
I'll
moving
move
this on
that.
to
It's worth the
council?
drive to Summerside.
It's on Island. Councillor Twill, you're good to move this to council as a seconder? Oh, he has a question. Okay.
About
ahead.
our local businesses here. What can we do to try to help them, Scott, to become competitive? Is there something missing, or is there something we can do from our end to help some of the businesses, some of our dealerships that are here in the city? You know,
Wouldn't that go under our procurement? That would be under finance, Councillor Twill. So you know what, Councillor McAleer, you're the chair of the finance committee. It would be worth maybe having a conversation around thinking of that, because we have asked them to come forward at our next meeting with an update on that. Perhaps get some information from Councillor Twill.
I understand that, but.
But they have to just
No,
put out a
no,
standard
No, I
document.
understand that, Chair, but I guess from the manager's perspective, I mean, you know, him and his team they're dealing with the bids, they're doing the ratings. And I guess I'm just looking for, is there something there that sticks out, Scott, where, you know, again, just have to ask the question where we can help make them competitive?
Again, we follow any policy that has been developed by finance, and so we are. That's how we review our tenders, is based on the procurement policy that is currently in place. And so there's nothing that we can do from our perspective to change that. It is a fair and open bid process. Anyone has the opportunity to bid on them, and it is primarily low bid wins, and that's what it was in this case. And that's what we have to review and make recommendations on.
Okay. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I want to move it.
Okay.
I'm
Do you have-
moving it.
Do you have anything else to say to it? or we
I just
good?
need a seconder.
Councillor McAleer to council?
Yeah, resolution's on the floor. I just want to say, Madam Chair, that you were around this chamber when we were discussing enterprise fleet management. We had all the dealers in right? From East Point to West Point, North Shore to the South Shore. I think local now is East Point to West Point, North Shore to South Shore. I think that was the focus on, the enterprise fleet management. So this is local. It's not as local as we want it because it's not in Charlottetown. So I do have one concern that keeps coming up through the chair to the chief engineer is that why do we always just go to the add-ons? Why don't we just go right for was Enterprise Fleet Management providing all the add-ons? I don't think they were. I think they were just providing the vehicles that we needed, whether it was a 3/4-ton, 4-door. These trucks are adding platforms, runner boards, sirens, all the bells and whistles. Why don't we just go back to what we were doing with Enterprise Fleet Management? Just want to go through the chair to the chief engineer.
So for this type of truck, because of the equipment or boxes that we're adding, they are aftermarket products, so they are not provided by the local dealerships. Some of them will install them, but not all of them have the capability, so some of them would have to outsource that. So that could disadvantage some of the bidders, and typically this is a lot of this work is done by like third parties, and so we see and we hear in the industry, we'd probably get a better price by doing it separate. We provide the chassis to another provider who then installs the box, because it kind of takes out that middle coordinator person, where, if one of the dealers, added a markup to their sub-trades, which typically happens. So that's why. So this type of truck, because it's a add-on or an aftermarket product, we go separately to for those types of installs. But if it's just a typical 4x4 or half-ton truck, then we get everything from them. And sometimes we'll add like the back racks and lights, but that's it. When it's dump boxes or other boxes, it's usually a third party that's doing it anyway.
Madam Chair, for this tender, it's just a chassis, right? But I know with some of the water and wastewater, there's a lot of add-ons that it excludes some of the local dealerships. Again, going back to Enterprise Fleet Management, we were just buying the straight truck for everything that we were doing. I don't recall the add-ons for water and wastewater. They had to go and provide or get someone else or get a third party to put those on. So I'm just asking if we can go back to that so it levels the market or levels the bidding for these tenders.
When I think I know what you're trying to get at, and so essentially, what Enterprise was doing was acting as our, because they have the capacity, they were making recommendations on when to go to when to purchase vehicles, showing us the price and which is the best value at the time based on, fuel consumption and number of kilometers. And so yes, why they provided a full package was they were also getting a third party to install the aftermarket products. So they went to Dodge and asked for a chassis, then they would go out and find out the best pricing for all the aftermarket products and then have that installed on them, and then they would have turnkey package that was delivered to the city. So we're just doing that in-house ourselves, is that those third-party add-ons, we tender them separately once we get the chassis.
Yeah, I'll come back to it later when we come to another tender, because I think Enterprise Fleet Management, we're doing everything in-house, whereas the local dealers can't do that in-house. They have to actually go out and buy with the add-ons, and it makes it more costly. Enterprise Fleet Management has a larger inventory based out of Wichita, Kansas, so they can go all over North America.
But they weren't doing the inventory work. No, they were still hiring third parties to do the work.
Yeah.
So yes, we're just doing the work of it. What Enterprise was helping us do, we're doing it internally.
Okay, so we're good to move this on? Okay, you good, everybody? Yeah. Okay, so this, under F, is supply and install two-way radios. And they're recommending that supply and install high-tech communications. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Scott.
Madam Chair. So yes, we used to have a former provider who can no longer provide us with the radios that match our existing system, which is Motorola. So we had to go back out for a new tender we're missing about, I think it's 57 two-way trucks and 12, or two-way radios and 12 handheld radios. And so we've received 3 submissions, and we're recommending to award to High Tech Communications in the amount of $86,873.43.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward. Do you have a question? Counselor McAleer?
Yeah, did this transaction, Madam Chair, or through to the manager, not lend itself to a tender piece, or?
Yeah, this was tendered, right? It's come into council as a tender.
Yeah, that was correct. There's three bids. And part of it is they had to provide proof that they are a Motorola certified dealer. 2 were able to do so. The third party was not able to do that. So that bid was rejected.
In the report, a letter was issued to all 3 vendors who submitted bids to provide proof that they were actually a Motorola Solution authorized dealer. Any other concerns or questions on this? Excuse me. Do I have someone to move this on to council for approval? Moved by Councillor McAleer, seconded by His Worship. We're all good? Thank you. G is, Scott's going to talk about with the new Eastern Gateway work, the partial Richmond Street closure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one last final land matter to finalize. This was probably talked about a couple years ago now, and if we're just formally getting everything in place. So the end of Richmond Street, as everyone knows, at Cumberland Street, when you drive down there, it kind of looks like it's a driveway for Maritime Electric Facility, but it's actually city right-of-way for a portion of it. It's an area that we haven't really serviced or maintained. It's in, the asphalt's in pretty rough shape, and so is the sidewalk as well. And it just leads to, it's completely surrounded by Maritime Electric properties. They practically own the entire block down there. And so the reason why I recommended to close this, this was an item that we would look at a land swap with Maritime Electric because we need a parcel of land from them for the final piece of the Eastern Gateway roadway. So we have to, as per our bylaw to close it, we have to get permission to close it, and then we do some advertising as per our bylaw in both the Royal Gazette and the Guardian for 4 straight weeks. At the end of the 4 straight weeks, we will have a public meeting so anyone can come and discuss the closure if they're opposed or in favor of it, or if they're impartial. And then we bring that information back to council for a final approval for the closure of it, and then we would work to finalize the exchange of properties with Maritime Electric.
Important to note that it is a different process than what our regular planning public meeting process is. Basically, you do have an opportunity to come and express your thoughts and concerns, which will be expressed to council to make sure we're thinking of all the things, but it's a little different process than that of our public planning meetings that happen. So another thing just on this is when we look at these vacant lands, because I saw His Worship's face when he realized it was a city right away there, we had been asking for a land map, I think it was from our assets management team. And I think I just want to make sure that we note that we would like to see a map of where those potential vacant lots or city-owned right-of-ways are in our city. So if we could just put a notice of motion that we would like to have that come back. I'm seeing you agree. Is there any questions on this particular Richmond Street closure?
Madam Chair, I do agree with you. I did speak to Paul Johnston about this inventory of alleyways and so forth that are public right-of-ways. He has started the process. I think he might have even finished it. But he is working on it. I saw a template of it. So this will just be a reminder. But could I just ask the chief engineer, if I look at Google Map, so when I go from the corner of Cumberland and Richmond and head east right into the plant, That was always our right of way?
Yes, it was. We were actually surprised by it as well. I don't believe our plow trucks go down there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
What's
but
that?
I don't believe our plow trucks go down
No,
there, or
no.
plows or anything.
No, they take care of it.
They do. They take
get the
care of
money.
it. Maritime Electric has always take care of it, but there's water and sewer infrastructure under there that's aged. We talked to Water and Sewer, and Maritime Electric understands that the infrastructure is old under there, but they understand that, and part of the land deal is if we make that transfer, they'll take on that infrastructure and replace it whenever it needs to be replaced because it is serving their facility. They would like to take this over and clean up the area as well. They're planning a nice like wrought iron fence along the front of it is some of the plans that they've kind of shown. They want to do some planting down on Cumberland Street. They would really want to clean up this part, and this would be part of that as well.
Well, they're also decommissioning
That's correct,
the
yeah.
power plant,
Yep.
and that'll be coming down.
Correct, yep.
And I think they're going in with another, I don't know where this jet engine's coming from, Iraq or somewhere, but there'll be another jet engine going down there. And then the 2 stacks are supposed to come down this year or next year.
That's,
They're-
I think
they're
in the
out-
fall is when they're coming
They're
down.
starting it.
Yeah, I believe it's the fall, yeah.
And so where are we going to take land from them if we give them land at the end of Richmond? Can you show us? I'm just-
I don't have that. Oh, I do. Yes, if you scroll down on the package, we're kind of showing the
Yeah.
rough outline of that land that we would take. So it's slightly bigger than what we're giving up, but Maritime Electric is aware of that and are in agreement with that.
So, page 30, Richmond Street becomes a green space? Or that's just greened out for?
That's just greened out just as a highlight. Yes, yeah.
And okay, so I'm looking at the other map.
Page, I think it's 32 or 38
Yeah,
of
so
your
Water
package.
Street,
Yep.
they're giving us parcel 24-1?
That's correct. Yep.
Oh. Wait, now, where is that? Is that inside the,
That is inside the fenced area, yep. That is the triangle back there, yep.
is that the mole?
That is, yep, yep.
But Scott, we talked about this the other night.
So.
There's
way
a lot
back-
of stuff that went there.
Yep.
And they grassed it in because I recall vividly when they tore down the plant that would be to the west there.
So we
They
are aware
didn't
there is.
take it away.
There are contaminants in it, like the rest of the event grounds. And we've worked with Maritime Electric and the Department of Environment. We have a plan in place fully for this. All that land, or any of the earth that is disturbed, is going to be a berm between Maritime Electric and the event grounds property, between the Maritime Electric property and the roadway. The goal is we're going to create a berm so that it's a green wall that individuals will be looking at from if you're at the event grounds, and creates a buffer between the people walking or driving and any of the maritime electric infrastructure over there. So yes, we understand it is contaminated. We are aware of that, but this is the alignment that worked the best for the site, and has been under discussions for. I think we've been talking about this project for 3 years now, or 2 years now, I guess. We have all the plans in place, and Department of Environment supports the plan. We have the letters from them, and we have environmental consultant has worked on it. And all the excavation, creating the berm, and all that stuff is all included in phase 2 of the work. So it's all there.
But you'll never be able to use it, except for seagulls that come in off the Hillsborough River and land there.
So at the end of the day, there's not going to be much of that left. A lot of it's going to be moved again to that berm that we're creating between the road and Maritime Electric. It was unutilized space anyway, and
Well, it was unutilized because that's where they dumped everything.
no, sorry. The space that's going to be left over between where the edge of the roadway is and the Maritime Electric property line is was under unutilized or unusable space anyway. So that's where we're going to create the berm with the material, and it'll be capped in green and be mowed.
So it's a bigger piece of land, but all we can do is grass it and berm it.
You could always remove it. There are ways to remove it and
Yeah,
dispose of it
you have to
properly.
Take it to Montreal.
I can't remember this part in particular, but probably this one is. The rest of it doesn't. But again, all this material, we have space on land that there's literally nothing we can do with because it's adjacent to the Maritime Electric property. We don't want to put anything over there along that fence line or near that electrical field. So it's going to create a nice green buffer between Maritime Electric and the event grounds. So that folks, when you're standing there, whether you're enjoying the park or if there's an event going on, you're looking at a nice greenscape wall over there, not substations and a jet engine and all that good stuff. It's also going to help down with noise because that jet engine does run sometimes, especially peak hours when they need to. So it acts a bit of a sound dampening as well for the neighborhood. So there's a number of things that have advantages for such a berm. And like I say,
Madam Chair, I don't want to belabor this, but we got some time to talk to Maritime Electric. Like, Scott, this is almost going back 20 years or more when they cleaned up that Esso tank farm. There's a lot of,
and it's not something
has
we
the
can't deal
Department of
with.
Environment tested what's under there? Like, there's a lot of bad stuff.
We all know what's in there, and again, Department of Environment has 100% supported the plan. We've issued them the environmental plan. They've given us a letter agreeing to, as long as it stays on the site, which we've shown them the plan that it is 100% staying there. It's just in a much better usable space where, again, creating a buffer between the event grounds and Maritime Electric. It's going to act as a beautification matter and help with with creating that a more beautiful area down there versus an industrial zone.
Oh, it'll be an interesting conversation at the council chamber. So, Councillor McAleer, do you have a quick question on this one too?
Well, yeah, just to the mayor, do you have different thoughts in mind, like another solution, suggestion, like I'm just
Yeah.
wondered.
I'd tell Maritime Electric, keep that land, and let's work out something else for the end of Richmond Street. Let them keep it. It's their bid number, it's not ours. Is that now we're formally, yeah, it's Maritime Electric. Let them keep it, because I think,
We'd have to work something out, though. I like the berm idea of not having to look at a substation if we're really going to look at doing some work on that events ground to try and draw
And it's a
people.
great use of otherwise unusable material. It's staying on
That's-
site.
We
it's-
don't want to be Aaron Brockovich.
no, we're still going to have to put up a berm because we have a roadway, a new roadway that is now replacing the slip road or slip lane onto Hillsborough Bridge from the east, the Water Street Parkway. That'll be gone. We'll have to come up with something to separate or delineate between Charlottetown Event Grounds and the new roadway.
So the roadway will be going. So
Oh,
if
no,
you
I know
look at
where- I know where the roadway
If you
is
look
going.
at the drawing there,
Yeah.
the reason why we chose to go through here, it's from a design perspective, it's a simpler. It's a nice sweeping motion, and we avoid that electrical infrastructure that's there at the event grounds, which is significant investment been made for any major events. Again, this has been talked about for a number of years since this project has been ongoing, and this was the path that was looked at, and I get consensus around the table is the path to go to. And again, like I say, it actually takes an unusable piece of land and it makes it usable because we are putting a road through it, and we're using that material to create a green wall, essentially, to delineate between the event space, between the road and Maritime Electric. So you're going to have Maritime Electric facility, this green berm,
No, I
the
understand that.
roadway, and then the event grounds.
Yeah. Just last point, Madam Chair. When CADC took over the property from Imperial Oil, there's an obvious reason why they didn't take that.
So they weren't allowed to. They weren't allowed to at that time.
No,
Yeah.
I know why they weren't allowed to.
Yep.
But now we're taking it. I think we still have some time to, talk to, like, keep it, and we'll work out something else with Richmond Street. But I've always had my eye in this mole, this grassy mole that didn't have a good feeling with me. Anyways, there's time as we move on.
Yeah, we'll have opportunity to discuss. We'll just get it to the council for
Yeah.
getting at least the public meeting process
Yeah,
started
we'll
on
get the-
Richmond Street.
And yes, then we have time to talk between, essentially, we just got to get the advertising going, like, because it takes 4 weeks, and
I'm sure you won't be the only person with concern on that property, so I'm sure that will be expressed through these public processes, so thank you. So can I have someone move this on for council for starting the process? Everybody's in favor of that? Okay. We have one more tender coming up here, our supply of ready-mix concrete and aggregate. Scott?
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an annual tender we go out for retendering. It's the concrete and some supply of aggregate that we use each year for our sidewalk crews. We had 3 bidders this year, and we are recommending to award to CRM Ready Mix in the amount of $252,875 plus all applicable taxes.
Okay, thank you. Can I have
Moved.
some, moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Twill?
Just a question, Scott.
Okay, go ahead,
Where
Councillor
is
Twill.
CR Ready Mix? Where are they located?
Yeah,
Where?
Stratford.
Mason Road, Stratford, Mason-Dixie Road.
Mason Road. Heard that before.
Thank you. Can I have, so there's worships moved, second, are you comfortable seconding this on to council? Okay, Councillor McAleer, you are? Yep, so everybody's in favor other, are you, yeah, okay, doesn't matter, because we're not really. Okay. Now we're on our final open session item, which is our supply of hot mix asphalt, tack and cold mix. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, this is for our own work crews. This is supply hot asphalt mix, tack and cold mix for our upcoming year. We had one bid, the Island Construction Limited, in the amount of $554,704.60 plus all applicable taxes, and we're recommending to award this work.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor McAleer. You good? Everybody's good? Thank you. Okay. So we now are going to ask someone to put a motion on the floor to move into closed session as per Section 119, subsection 1, subsection E of the Municipal Government Act.
I believe we
to
have
discuss
one more. My
Yeah.
apologies. The
Public benches, Madam.
Public
Madam
benches.
Chair.
Where's that?
J. J is in Julie?
No, on my agenda, it's
Oh,
moved
is
to,
on the backside maybe or something?
No, I got it
I'm
right
bringing
here.
those public benches up, or I'm bringing a couple things up under new business, but no.
Reports in the
Oh,
package.
okay, it's not on my, it's not on my agenda, excuse me. We have one more item, public benches, that I'm looking forward to hearing. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been some talk about public benches, so we want to give council and committee and the public a bit of information of where we're at with our public benches and what we do. So we approximately have 75 benches installed across the city, and these benches are primarily installed on street corners adjacent to city streets and adjacent to existing sidewalks in downtown core. Some benches have been recently installed adjacent to multi-use pathways in the areas where there are no residential houses nearby as a safety measure in the event that someone is using these facilities and requires an immediate rest area. At this time, the location of benches around the city, we don't have a formal policy, but rather the decision to install a bench is treated operationally and on a case-by-case basis. And just for information purposes, we will be building a few new old-fashioned style benches using some of the lumber that was milled and kiln dried after, or that was left over during Hurricane Fiona. So we wanted to bring this information forward. If it's something that, we definitely look at something in terms of policy of how we add new benches. We just... Again, we like to keep in mind, we remind council that as we add more benches, there's more infrastructure, there's more costs with that, and with more infrastructure, there's the need for additional resources in terms of labor staff, because it does take significant amount of time to deploy these and maintain them each and every year. And we're not opposed to formalizing a policy around it. We just try to be careful every year to not add too many each year, just to lessen that burden on our team.
Similar, one moment, Councillor Twill, but similar to speed humps, I think it would be beneficial to kind of look around to see what other jurisdictions do, Scott, around benches, especially as we're promoting these active transportation trails. We're really encouraging, especially our senior population, to get out and walk. Sometimes if we're in a populated area, it would be beneficial to have the opportunity to sit, and I know Councillor Twill has been advocating strongly for this, so there's not a lot of discussion other than I think it would be really helpful if you could have someone have a look at what do other jurisdictions do and perhaps bring back something to our committee. That was actually part of my new business, was to follow up on Councillor Twill's request. So I don't think we have a lot to talk about today, because I think what we need to do is give direction to staff to maybe go and look and see if there is something we could look at to compare to maybe develop something here. Councillor Twill, would that be good for you today?
Yeah, it'd be good. I think we need, like to get a map to see where these benches are located to begin with. Secondly, sometimes I think you can overthink things and overcomplicate them. You talk about our aging population that are walking up some of these long streets, and would like to have that opportunity to be able to sit down and rest. It's difficult for some of our seniors and people with disabilities that like to have that opportunity to sit down, and there's nowhere for them to sit. Maple Avenue, for example. Sherwood, some of these older suburban communities. I personally believe it's a good investment, and I'd like to, from an idealistic perspective, I'd like to put out as many benches as possible. I know it's probably taxing on our staff, but it's what our residents are talking about. And
Councillor, you're Chair of Parks and Rec, correct? Who oversees the Senior Advisory Committee? And I'm really
I don't need to go to the Seniors Advisory Committee.
No, but they might be able to provide us with some areas.
No, but
based
I
on-
was approached over the weekend
Yes.
by a resident in Sherwood.
Yeah.
Right?
We
And
know,
then
yeah.
when I did collaborate with her some more,
Yeah.
I found out the counselor for the ward in the previous year had made the request as well. So what I'm trying to say is, as elected officials, I believe that we need to look at, a map and look at some of the long streets like the Maple Avenue, Scott, or some of these other long streets where seniors are walking, commuting up and down these streets. And to see where it's possible to be able to install some of these benches. Because, again, these are long walks, and they do get tired, and it's difficult for them. So I want to keep that in mind as well. And I believe that we've got to do what we can to make the city more livable, more walkable, and make it a place where they can have that comfort zone, knowing that, geez, if I walk up the street and I get tired or get winded, I can have an opportunity to sit down and rest. That's what I wanted to bring to the table.
And I think that could be part of your policy, similar to our speed hump, temporary speed hump that you're bringing to council, would be allow elected officials to indicate maybe certain areas that they're hearing from for their seniors. But I still think our senior advisory group is a really good place. They've done some really good work around getting input around areas that maybe although Sherwood because someone's reached out, but where else in the city? Or even our civic board, who look at different areas for people that might have challenges and need areas to stop and rest and walk. So I think we'll bring that to the civic board.
And Madam Chair,
And if you could bring it
you're
to,
always thinking outside the box.
always have to.
And Madam Chair, I just want to ask through you to the chief engineer. That's 75 public works benches. Okay, so
There's Parks
we
and Rec.
we have the chair of Parks and Recreation here. So how many benches does Parks and Recreation have throughout the city? And
Well, there's
I
where
know-
we need to come out of silos again, your worship,
Yeah,
as
no,
far
and
as
so
a bench
that's
program.
75 you have.
being
So what does Parks and Recreation have? And I know when I first was elected back in 2000, the Confederation Trail during the winter was never plowed, never cleared, so we cleared it. When you cleared it, guess what? People had to sit somewhere, so we put benches on the Confederation Trail because it's 13 kilometers in length. But you live, Madam Chair, you live in East Royalty, McCrae Drive up to East Royalty, where we put the new after transportation pathways. How many benches are there? How many benches are there?
None.
0. How many are on Upton Road, out in Ward 7 or Ward 8? None. Like, we have to look, we have to
Well,
do the
that's
big
why I think
picture.
that what we're asking is maybe look at a criteria around what it could look like, what's other places doing, and then
For both parks, recreation, public
combination,
works,
benches,
right?
a bench program.
Yep.
We'll call it the bench
And,
program.
and include.
Cross departments,
And I would
Correct.
include Frank.
out of the silos.
We'll call it
Okay.
out of the silo benches program.
Oh, Frank's going to speak. Sorry, Franco.
Sorry, just provide a comment. So we do work with Public Works. We don't put benches places where they have them. Our benches goes along boardwalks, trails, in parks. I can't name every bench there is, but there is a lot of benches in Victoria Park, a lot of benches at Confederation Landing, and we have some other downtown locations. And then we have, and those are all GPS, so we know exactly where they go every year. Within our parks, some parks have more benches than others because of the size, but I would guesstimate to say that pretty well every single park we have has a bench in it. Yeah, in the park. So I think, and the criteria we use, we do have a list of criteria, sort of where we put benches and when, and we're always open to requests when we get a request that a bench is needed there, or maybe it's a picnic table, it could be something other, so.
Yeah, I think these are kind of those, not park per se, but these, I think Councillor Twill's looking for public streets and public roadways. So again, we'll send that back with staff with hope that we can come back with something in a little, and we'll stay on it. Councillor Twill, remind me. Councillor McAleer, do you have a question before
Just
you
a
go
quick
to close?
question, Madam Chair, to the manager, just on the Fiona debris, or not debris, but the trees and possible benches. Any ideas, Scott? Is that maybe 5 benches, 10? Any idea of a number that may come out of that program?
Yeah, 1,000. Yeah. I think we're getting about 1,000 feet of it milled. And again, we haven't decided how many that could be because, we can do a double bench, what they call, where it looks like it has a centerpiece in it just for a longer one. So we haven't identified how many benches that will come from that. The other thing that we're planning on doing with, or what we'd hope to do, and we'll bring that to council to approve. We thought it'd be great once they're on the anniversary of Fiona this year, is deliver one to both the city of Fredericton and Moncton. Both those cities came out with their tree crews and significantly helped us during Fiona. And I think it'd be a really nice token of our appreciation to show up, and we can put the mayor and our chair in a car together and drive over there and deliver to them if they like.
Take the electric car?
Yeah, but that's something that's on the radar for this September if it's approved by committee and council to do that.
Yay, road trip with the
Imagine
mayor.
that, you and I on a road trip.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I do want to follow up with Councillor Twill. The app ID, I know Frank is our manager for Parks and Rec. We do have them GPS, but we should do them for both all benches throughout the city, and then we could have a better idea, where do we need to fill the gaps or fill in the gaps?
Sounds good. Okay, so now I need a motion to move to closed session as per section 119, subsection 1E of the MGA Municipal Government Act to discuss a matter still under investigation, which is the negotiation for a lease agreement. Moved by,
Madam Chair, listen, I apologize.
you're leaving.
No, I was late.
Oh, yes.
But I did speak to the chief engineer before the meeting, and it was about our surplus inventory of buildings that are on properties that we are clearing to make sure that we have roadways ready to go. I just want to get an update, so could I put that under new business? Do you have
When we're coming back out to go to new business, and you can put a motion on the floor to have that discussed at some time. We probably won't discuss it today unless he has a report and ready to go and discuss it if he
Right,
feels
because we
comfortable.
have 3 or 4 buildings that have been sitting on these properties.
When we get to new business.
For 2
But right
years,
now,
3
I am
years.
just
Like
asking
to
for
have them
someone to put a
sold,
motion to go
and
to
then we
closed
can move-
session. There you go.
Move them,
Okay, shut
move them
shut
on.
his mic off.
Move,
Yeah, we might need a policy to deal with it, Counselor Twill, we could. Yeah, it's okay, you know what, then you can't argue why it was done and if it
Jurisdictional
was
scan.
fair. It was
Okay.
all done right.
Madam-
Okay,
Madam Chair,
so,
just
thank
from-
you. We're going to have a motion to go to closed session, and we will come back and have a beautiful discussion on putting a notice of motion for his worship.
God, I love this
Moved
committee.
by Counselor McAleer, seconded by Mr. Mayor. Everybody's in favor. Let's go to closed. Thank you. I'll be back. Seconded by Councillor McAleer, thank you. Welcome back. So
New
that was
business?
Some discussion, yeah, yes, your worship, we're going to introduce new business. I would like to ask a question before you do. I have under new business the accessibility awards criteria for the Civic Board for persons with disabilities. And I know we weren't sure if it had to be a report and everything come from staff. I guess the original criteria that I did have came from Rebecca already. I think it's been a standing criteria that's been used, that's been approved. And I'm wondering if there's any way we can recommend as a committee that we adopt this similar accessibility awards criteria and get it to council. They've been waiting for quite a while, and because we haven't had an admin staff to kind of help facilitate that. Scott, can you
Yeah, so
answer that, or do we
we-
have to come back with a report?
We will put a quick report together for it, but high level, what we're going to do is just go back and see when we can, if we can find when it was approved at council, if it ever was. Because if it was approved at council, it depends on the wording, if that was the criteria to be used from that day forward, unless there's an amendment, then they can still use it without another
Without
council
having to?
approval.
Okay, I'm
So
gonna
we did-
provide
so
this to
we'll-
Tracy.
So that's why the report's not here today. It was just a bit of a last request, and we started some work on it, but we just wanted to do that research to see what was approved back then.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And
But Madam Chair, I'm glad you
maybe-
brought that up about the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee.
Okay.
How many meetings have you been asking? Where is the admin support?
Yeah, we do need to
We're-
have someone
We're relying
present.
on Judith Bayless to do the minutes, but to take them from her up to the next level, sometimes, sometimes we're always missing that next step. So can we, in the
They did
past, it
move
was
it to
Wallace
3:30.
Higgins. And
So in the event someone's not there, if we're unable to attend, the committee's supposed to take their minutes and do their own minutes according to the policy that we're aware of. And then they send them off to Mr. Higgins now. But we will have a new admin downstairs next week. And so between them, we'll get things, we'll be in much better shape once our new admin's here next week, managing this file for sure.
And those meetings are fairly quick, so maybe we could talk about moving the time to lunchtime for them where there would be a staff present and make it more, a little easier. I might be able to scoot up. It's not like we're running into a couple-hour meetings. For me to do committee meetings is hard over lunch, but the community advisory board, okay? So that was what I had. And do you have a notice of motion you would like to see?
on the sale of surplus housing inventory, i.e. that we purchased the property on Mount Everett Road to extend Spencer Drive from Spencer West to Spencer East onto Mount Everett Road. Then we have Mrs.
We already
Du-
approved those to go to tender.
Well, they're not a tender yet. People have been floating around asking where they at. Plus, I thought we already agreed to go with 54 Maple Avenue.
We did.
And
We
that's up to
agreed to put
tender?
out- Yes, we
I don't
did.
believe we got official word from committee and council to initiate the start of that.
Yeah, we did, because
The-
Paul presented here
Oh,
It's not on your list of.
at the next meeting.
yeah, it's at the next meeting. Yeah, we,
It's coming?
yeah, it's
Okay.
coming.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we just,
that's on
yeah,
the
we had a,
part of the
our agenda was
item
quite big
agenda?
this time around. Yeah.
Okay,
We had
great.
A to T today.
Oh, we could,
But yes,
So we cut it.
it's coming to the next meeting. The report's ready. We just we had a lot of items, just resolutions to bring forward, and we
so that'll be
prioritized
the
it.
K to Z agenda?
Yes.
That's correct.
So
yeah.
thank you,
Could I
that's your
just make
notice
sure,
of motion.
make sure that's there? And Madam Chair, there is the other issue, the e-scooters. I just want to give the public notice for that K to Z agenda that's coming up next, for the next meeting. The owner-operator was told that he cannot use public space for his e-scooters, so I just want to find out.
I think I'm going to recommend that the 5 departments that are involved in the e-scooter business come together and present something all to all of us. Can that happen, Eleanor, where?
hope so.
You know, we have Public Works, we have
Email
police,
that needs to go back to him
Yeah, oh, no,
in terms of an agreement that needs to be.
yeah.
and economic. Yeah, like, it's just too many departments?
No, there's a lot of confusion here because of I call it the cross-pollination Like, we just have to make things work a little more efficiently. Case in point is the farmer's market. So we just, I'm getting calls, people are getting emails, text messages.
So your notice of motion is you'd like to have all these departments come together with one
I
report?
just want to make sure that this issue, including the housing inventory, are addressed in your next agenda from K
K
to Z.
We got it.
And
Thank
the
you very
last-
much.
And the last notice I want to give, Madam Chair, is that there are spaces out in the north end of the city where there is lots of litter in the ditches, in the pathways that run parallel to the Confederation Trail. Like, we have to determine, is that our responsibility, or is that the property owner that is adjacent to these roadways? Like, can we find that out? No answer required.
Yeah, that's just a
that
notice
can
of
be brought
motion to
up
look into.
on your K to Z agenda at the next meeting.
Yep, yeah, we can look into that. And just an FYI on that, I believe Earth Day is coming up very soon. There is typically a roadside cleanup that is put on by the Women's Institute, I believe.
And Fusion.
Yes, yep.
Yes.
And
Yes, Lori and I
that
participated.
usually produces a lot of individuals who come out and help clean up the roadside. So I think we're just early, it's been an early melt season, and so people are thinking, it's been, usually we still have a little bit of snow sometimes at this time of year and ice that hides it. So I think that's why you're seeing more of it, is just we have no snow left. And so, yes, by that, we typically see a lot of debris picked up from that, and we work with the Women's Institute and those folks. They lead the bags to the roadside, and between us and the province, we'll pick up any bags that are within the public right-of-way in the city limits. The province cleans up those outside the city limits, and it's a great partnership, and there seems to usually quite a bit of debris that gets picked up and put on the roadside out of those. So that's a big one. Anything that gets missed, yes, if there's areas of concern, we send staff out for sure.
And another notice of motion for me is we had worked with the province as well as yourself and Waste Watch. And I know there was going to be follow-up talk about, because we're coming to that time now where garbage is starting to pile, there's melt, people are starting to see it. I know that the calls are already starting to come to our public works staff and Todd. So if I could get an update, or has there been more meetings? I think our committee would benefit from an update that we could have and share that information.
I appreciate that we do this once a year, but you know what? It has to be maintained. One day a year, it's great, Scott, I agree. I thank the Women's Institute, I thank the Fusion volunteers, I thank all the volunteers that come out, but we have to identify these property lines, who's responsible. Like, these ditches go in the north end, the east side, the west side, and one thing that we're noted for, when you think of Charlottetown, it's cleanliness, and I believe that that's just another way we hit that ball out into the field. So if we can just look at how we
Find
take
out
on
if
this
there's
issue.
that. Okay, so I'm going to ask now, do you have something you want to say, Councillor McAleer?
Yeah,
No.
no, just on the litter piece, I was out early this morning on the trails in my neighborhood there in Beech Grove, and and then I was coming onto the street there, May Point Road, and there was a group walking through, and they were picking up litter. I'm not sure. I stopped and I spoke to them and I thanked them. Anyway, and it struck me after. I mean, there's two sides to this litter piece, and this is something that's always bothered me before getting involved and sitting in this chair or city council. Is there's two pieces to the litter thing. There's those that litter, and then the ones that pick it up. And I think that if there's an opportunity to think, there's got to be consequences to the litter thing, and I don't know what could ever happen in a bylaw, or you put more teeth in it, and I don't know if there's, the people that throw the stuff away, and it's bothersome, and I don't know if ramping up the bylaw and the consequence and the fine piece, you can change the behavior, but anyway, just.
That's what they're going to, hopefully
Comment.
Scott will come back with like there has been talk about that, because it's pretty confusing. Something that seems so simple isn't, but we'll hear from him at the next one.
Move to adjourn.
You would like to move to adjourn. Second, all in favor?